In June 2019, we attended the Social Housing Festival in Lyon, and together with Peter and with Judith, I was making vlogs on what was happening there. And I attended a screening of the documentary Push by Leilani Farha, who is the UN Special Rapporteur on Adequate Housing. And I had the privilege to interview her afterwards. And we're going to see a clip of this interview. And the first thing that I asked her was what she thought when she got invited to speak at the Social Housing Festival.
You know, I'm based in North America, and I've worked a lot on housing issues in North America. And in North America, social housing has a very bad reputation because a lot of social housing was built in the 50s and 60s in particular, and 70s. And it was built in this ghetto style. So, you know, buildings sort of removed from the rest of the community, and no park space, not beautiful, just these sky-rise, ugly, poorly kept buildings. And so in that way we have a bit of a negative view of social housing. And so when I was like hearing about a social housing festival, it seemed like an oxymoron.
Yeah.
And then I also think, well, can we only talk about social housing at a social housing festival, or can we talk about housing in the market system and private housing? So after I explored this with Mark, then I realized, no, everything is good to be spoken about, but it is a moment, and an important moment, to say we do need social housing, as so many people are falling through the cracks, and we do need to fortify it because it's disappearing.
Yeah. So one of the main themes of the festival was the financialization of the housing sector, and also Push is about this financialization. And I asked her what message we should derive from her documentary.
I think we need to regulate the private market better. What's happening now with this financialization and these big financial actors who've moved in since 2011 and are really buying up affordable housing, including social housing, they've just been allowed to do it. In fact, they've been supported through laws and policies to do it. Yeah. So I think for me, the film screams like, let's regulate this, you know, let's identify the actors, and let's get governments engaged again in housing and in regulating the financial sector, and recognizing that housing is a human right and it's not a commodity. So it can't be compared to other commodities, like in the movie I referenced gold, but we could say steel or wheat. You know, those are not the same as housing. So
Leilani Farha is a special rapporteur on adequate housing, and she advises governments on their housing systems. And of course I also asked her about what she thought about the Amsterdam housing system and what advices she would give to Amsterdam and to the Netherlands.
People have to come together and try to develop creative solutions to what I'm hearing is happening in Netherlands and Amsterdam particularly, the squeezing out of young people. That's actually a phenomenon around the world. Young people are finding it incredibly hard to live in the cities where they have to work because that's where the jobs are. Yeah. So, you know, I go to places, I always ask young people whenever I go into a cafe, regardless of the city, I ask the young people serving me, where do you live? Yeah. And if they live close to where they're working, it's because they live with their parents.
Oh yeah.
If they live far away, it's because they can't afford anything in the city. Yeah. So often commuting, like long, 2 hours sometimes for this very basic job where they're not making that much money. In Europe you have better wages than in North America, for example, but still it's not enough to compensate for the time and the expense of traveling.
And finally I asked her what motivates her to work on documentaries like these, and also about work on housing in general, and this was her answer.
I think what drives me on this issue in particular is it is very unknown, and yet it's everywhere. Yeah. So it's quite scary, and I think the film captures the monster. It's like I sometimes say, oh, the film is a thriller, you know, because it's not a documentary; it's a thriller because it worries me deeply that many people are experiencing the effects of this. Whether it's a person living on the street who may have had an affordable apartment and then was evicted because they couldn't pay their rent because it was increased. Or people living in informal settlements in the global south who can't afford to live in decent accommodation, rental accommodation. They know it's wrong. They know something is happening to them.
Yeah.
But they also often feel it's their own fault, or
Yeah.
well, I'm poor, and I know, no, it's the system and it's governments. And this is what's so shocking to me. Governments are supporting it, not just allowing it, as I said before. They're supporting this system. So that enrages me. And then also I just think it's unacceptable.
Yeah.
The housing conditions globally, it's unacceptable. And I can't live in a world like this. I don't want to. I want to live in a world where there is justice and where human rights are the values that motivate governments.
So, if you like to see more about the International Social Housing Festival and all the other vlogs that we made, then check out the other videos on this channel, and hope to see you at the next housing festival.